You ever have that feeling like you're just adrift in your job, in your life? Like you're being pulled in a million different directions, and you don't have a clue where you're actually supposed to be heading? Well, the difference between feeling lost and feeling like you have a real sense of purpose, it often boils down to one thing: knowing your core values. And, this is the important part, having the courage to actually act on them. So today, we're going to dig into how to find that internal compass and then how to give it a voice. Okay, let's just start with this idea from Parker Palmer because it's so powerful. This isn't about sitting down and deciding what your values should be. It's about listening. It's the idea that our values aren't things we just invent for ourselves. Nope. They're more like truths we have to discover, things that are already inside of us, just waiting for us to pay attention. So, what are we really talking about when we say core values? Well, think of them as the ideals that are uniquely yours, the things that are most important to you. They're basically your internal compass. And this compass, it does more than just point you in a direction. It anchors you. It keeps you connected to who you really are, especially when things get tough or you have a big decision to make. All right, so let's really dive into this whole idea of an internal compass. Why is having one so absolutely crucial for getting through life? You know, getting clear on your values isn't just some fluffy, feel-good exercise. It is an incredibly practical tool. Seriously, when you know deep down what truly matters to you, it just builds this incredible confidence and resilience. It means you can walk into stressful situations or face complicated choices, not with doubt, but with this really steady, grounded sense of purpose. So, the big question is, how do we find this compass? I mean, it's not like you can just pick your values from a list and call it a day. So let's walk through a really powerful exercise that helps you uncover them. It's called Finding Your Peak Landscape. This is such a cool way to connect with what's really inside you. So first, you think of a real place, anywhere where you just felt completely alive, totally in your element. Then you describe it with all your senses. What did you see, hear, smell? Now the magic really happens in the next two steps. You grab the exact words you used, and then you dig into those words to see what deeper values they're pointing to. Let's look at a real-world example from someone named Kate. Her peak landscape is a family cabin, so she writes down phrases like sitting on the dock and open water. See, those aren't just descriptions, they point to core values like a need for freedom or a feeling of being unbounded. A canoe might connect to movement and physical power, and the cabin itself, well, that taps into family and tradition. It's just a brilliant way to turn a feeling into a real insight. Okay, so now you've got your compass. You've identified your values, you're feeling good. But this is where the real work starts, because there is often a huge gap between knowing what you value and actually living it. Think about it like this. On one side, you've got importance. You know, how important a value like, say, honesty is to you. But on the other side, you've got consistency, how often you actually act in a way that reflects that value. When there's a big disconnect between those two things, psychologists have a name for it: self-generated distress. That nagging feeling you get when you're not being true to yourself? Yeah, it lives right there, in that gap. You know, we tend to think that the biggest ethical challenges are in these murky, gray areas where it's hard to know what the right thing to do is. But honestly, a lot of the time, the choice is pretty clear. The real struggle isn't figuring out what's right. It's finding the skill and the guts to actually do it when you're under pressure. So, how do we bridge that gap between knowing and doing? Well, this brings us to a really game-changing approach designed for exactly that. It's called Giving Voice to Values, or GVV for short. GVV completely reframes the problem. It shifts the question away from this endless debate about what's the right thing to do. It kind of assumes you probably already know what you think is right. The much more useful and powerful question becomes, okay, I know what's right. Now, how do I get it done effectively? Say, the old way of thinking about this stuff is all about ethical analysis, picking apart these impossible dilemmas. And that can just lead to what some people call ethics fatigue. But this new question, the GVV way, is all about ethical action. It's about practicing, scripting what you'll say, and building the actual competence and confidence to make a difference. And that brings us right to the heart of the GVV method. It basically treats acting on your values as a skill. And just like any other skill, it's something you have to practice. I absolutely love this metaphor. Voicing your values is like a muscle. You're not born with huge biceps, right? You got to go to the gym. And it's the same thing here. The more you practice speaking up and acting on your values, the stronger that ethical muscle gets, and the easier it becomes to use it when it really matters. So, how do you get your reps in? You rehearse. You literally write out a script of what you would say. You think ahead and anticipate the pushback, all those reasons and rationalizations people will throw at you. You practice with your friends or colleagues to get feedback, and you learn how to do it in a way that plays to your personal strengths. That is how you build moral muscle memory. So here's the bottom line. The goal isn't to guarantee some easy victory every time. It's to give yourself actual practiced options when you're in a tough spot. I mean, think about it. We're all way more likely to do something if we've practiced it or at least seen someone else do it successfully. GVV gives you that prep time, so you have another choice besides just staying quiet. And that brings everything together so perfectly. Discovering your values, that gives you the compass. It points you to your true north. But a compass by itself doesn't actually move you anywhere. Giving that compass a voice, practicing how to act on it, that's the engine. That's the action that propels you forward in the direction you want to go. At the end of the day, this whole thing is deeply personal. It's about figuring out who you are, what you stand for, and then building the skills to bring that person into the world with courage and effectiveness. So we'll leave you with this to think about. You have your compass. Now, how are you going to give it a voice?